Well, hello and happy Tuesday to everybody watching wherever you are, either live with us now or on the chat in the post live, the future. This is the first of a series of little live sessions that we're going to be doing over the next few weeks, looking into some of the key insights from the Voice Consumer Index and also reviewing the weekly voice news with you every couple of weeks as well to kind of keep you up to date with the latest stuff that is happening in the world of voice and conversational AI, basically. If we've not met before, you're watching this after the fact, first time you've come across it in the stream, I'm James Poulter. Everyone knows me as JP, and I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders here at Vixen Labs. And if you don't know what the Voice Consumer Index is yet, well, you can go and find out more about that by going to this QR code and download it. You'll also find a link to it appearing shortly in the chat, and you can go and download it, and you can get insights into the study that we've conducted now for the past couple of years for free with 6,000 people across the UK, the US, and Germany, all into the way that they're using their voice technology at home, at work, on the move, and all other places in between, and work out what it's going to mean for you and your business. Now, this week is a special one because every couple of weeks we're going to be doing these news segments, and I thought I would bring in our resident news desk reader and friend of the show, and my colleague Rich, our creative strategist at Vixen Labs, who does a fantastic session for us every week looking at the news that's coming out in and around the voice AI industry. And so I thought I'd bring Rich on, and here he is. Here's Rich. Nice to see you, Rich.
Hello.
Thanks for being with us. Yes, we have got two kind of buzzed head white males, so we're doing really well for the diversity points. Sorry for everybody on that, but good to see you. Rich, how you doing this afternoon?
Yes, all good. Enjoying the hot weather.
It is rather stuffy. Sorry for those of you that are not in the UK at the moment and having to endure this current heat wave, but things are hot, 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 and things are hotting up in the world of voice as well. There's lots of good news to get through. Did you like that transition? That was spot on.
That was smooth. That was.
Slick. It's about as slick as I currently feel underneath this t-shirt, which is quite slick. Okay, so we're going to get into some news. But for those that don't know, Rich, maybe Rich, you'll just kind of introduce yourself to people watching, a little bit more about you.
So yeah, I'm Rich. I have been working at Vixen for a year almost now. Before that, I had my own company called Veniloqui, and so I've been in the voice industry for about 5 years. And what people might know me a bit better for is being Echo Dad, where I review Alexa skills with my two children, who are nicknamed Kermit and Bear. So yeah, on my YouTube channel, the Echo Dad YouTube channel, you can find a bunch of kids' real reactions to Alexa skills and how they actually deal with them in real life.
Absolutely, and you can go grab a link to the Echo Dad YouTube channel in the comments below the video if you're watching now. Now we are watching the comments, so if you've got anything that you want to kind of share with us as we go through these stories, and you maybe want to hear a little bit more about what's going on, then by all means you can do that. So do drop a note in the chat below, and Rich and I will endeavour to try and answer questions as we go as well. So thank you if you are watching live or after the fact as well. So as I say, it's what as we call it in Vixen here, Newsday Tuesday, and it's time to review some of the week's best news, and then we're going to get into insight of the week from the Voice Consumer Index. So we'll get onto that now. So let's bring up some news. And Rich, what story are we starting with this week?
So this week we're going to start something that you've touched on already in one of your lives. It's the fact that the Metaverse Standards Forum is it's beefing out. It's becoming more of a thing. There's now about 36 different companies in the Metaverse Standards Forum, which now includes Microsoft, Nvidia, Epic Games. And what this forum is, it's a place where they're trying to create global rules on the metaverse and kind of Web3 in general. So we it's really important to my password that he wants.
There's always a password.
It's really there's always a password. It's right when you don't want it. So what's really interesting about this is we've got a group of companies that are trying to set the standards. Now, I'm all in favour of professionals setting standards over potentially kind of career politicians, but also there's some elements of it that is it a cause for concern? We've got these big companies like Microsoft, like Meta, like Nvidia, that are potentially are they going to drown out the little voices? Are they going to drown out some of those smaller companies? But it's really nice to see a standards committee coming together over this stuff because it is so new.
Yeah, I mean, for those that maybe missed the live I did last week about this topic, we certainly think that there's a lot of room for kind of freedom and opportunity and all that kind of stuff in the metaverse, but it also does present some risks, right? And I think it's the biggest dichotomy in this whole thing is about trying to create a world where things are not necessarily controlled by big companies. Lots of it is about being decentralized technologies and all that kind of stuff. But actually, when you kind of go down that route, you don't always have the safeguarding and the protections in place to make sure that those things remain safe spaces to hang out. So, be intrigued to see where this goes, and particularly with these kind of big companies now joining this forum to try and set those very standards. That raises some interesting questions. But then on the other side of it, you need these kind of big companies to push forward, the main standards. You think of things like HTML5. You think about, some of the essentially killing off Flash after all. May it rest in peace. Those types of things. We've seen those things come and go in the past, haven't we? And I think that this, helps us see potentially a bit more standardization happening in the space. And ultimately, I think that's a good thing.
No, I completely agree, and you're right. Having that standardization is something that is super important, and it's super. You think about any of these like new technologies, it is always important to have a body that is full of experts, and I think that's the important thing. It's industry experts that are going to be setting out these kind of standards, and not people that don't necessarily understand. The issue then is how are they implemented further down the line by governments and organisations that aren't involved in this standards forum.
Absolutely. If you want to get the links, by the way, to any of these, we're going to be posting them in the show notes below in the comments, so you'll be able to grab those later on. Rich, what's story number 2 this week?
So, story number 2. This is quite interesting. So, a Japanese toy company called TakaraTomy have created a smart speaker specifically aimed at children that the parents can input their voice. They create and then it creates a synthesized voice of the parents, so that the children can have their bedtime stories read to them by a synthesized voice if the parent's not there. Now, there's ethical questions around this. Is that the right thing to do? Is that then going to be an excuse for parents not to spend time with their children? I've done a fair bit of travelling, and we talked about this on Newsday Tuesday. I've done a fair bit of travelling, and when I travel, I record myself reading stories to my children for it to be played back later. Now, I prefer that personal touch, but this is an interesting way of working around not being around.
Yeah, I like that. Working around not being around. I mean, it's a common problem, right? I mean, I think we've seen a few examples of this recently coming out in the news of whether it's this one about kind of being able to provide that presence when you're not around, and also Amazon displaying at their recent conference at Remars, this example of being able to synthesize voices in the future for kind of dead grandparents and things like that. It's so funny. I've been avidly trying to search YouTube for the clip of it. I can't find it. It must have been a conference about 10 years ago where I was doing this keynote and talking about this thing of, we're not far away from there being chatbots that can read all of our social media and come up with basically a digital version of you, and you'll be able to, and your grandchildren are going to be able to talk to it. And I don't always think of myself that being that prescient, but here we are, right? This is essentially that example, and the same goes for this as well. Yeah, is this something you would feel happy with your kids talking to, Rich? Kind of having a parental voice coming out of a toy that they don't recognise?
I don't think so. I mean, I think they recognise. I mean, we've been Echo Dad's been around since Bear was 2, so he's been using this for a long time, and he understands the difference between Alexa or Google and everything else. But I think if it was my voice that was coming out of it, it might confuse slightly, especially if a synthetic voice is not kind of a perfect rendition.
Yeah, I think it's something I've been always really interested in particularly back in the day when I used to kind of work in the toy business, about kind of this whole connected and digital play side of things, is that there is that really fine line between the way in which kids will react to a toy and a character that they know is outside of their real world, and then a voice or a character that they recognize as being someone within their sphere of connection and sphere of influence. And this does kind of blur that boundary in a kind of really interesting way. I kind of note obviously that I think it's a voice only experience, right? There's no kind of visual aspect to this.
Yeah, it's voice only. Yeah,
which I suppose kind of adds to that point of you're not seeing a video, it's not watching back a recording, for example, with some of the stuff you've done on YouTube, right? You're not watching someone back and you understand, oh, that's the voice of my parent coming out of this thing. It's a toy with that voice in it, which I does think kind of breaks that fourth wall a little bit, and maybe adds that creepy factor slightly, which we may need to balance in the future.
Yeah, and my kids struggle when like this whole kind of voice only element when it's a voice you recognize. My kids struggle with a phone, right?
Yeah.
So they're so used to video calls that they'll try and look at the screen and try and understand and have a video call with someone. So actually having that conversation without the video element with a person that they know, yeah, I don't know how well they'll deal with that in the long run.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting one. For those of you that are watching, maybe if you've got kids, let us know in the chat. Would you actually use a toy that used your voice? Would you rather use a toy that used the voice of a character that you know? Love your opinions in the comments as we go. Okay, and this week's story number 3, we're talking about airlines. Tell us what's going on with
Yeah.
United.
So United are now they've already got like a chatbot, and they are linking it up now with a startup called NLX, and that is going to be augmented to create a better experience for their users. And what's I think is really interesting about this is not just that this is an airline that is taking essentially 70% of its kind of its load and passing it on to onto a chatbot, and it does it frees up agents for the more complex things. But what's really interesting is this is not just airlines. You look at Beefeater, the British food brand, like a restaurant chain.
Yeah.
Like they've started to introduce kind of customer service.
Yeah.
Uber are starting to do voice customer service for their food ordering. The Indian government have got an element of customer service in their kind of their pensions checking and their kind of COVID vaccine booking. So this is becoming something that is kind of it's creeping in lots of different places, and I think it's almost now like if there's not a chatbot experience, you kind of wonder why.
Yeah, you do wonder why. I suppose we see kind of like a really broad kind of spectrum when it comes to the types of what these experiences look like, right? At one end of the spectrum, you've got that kind of very staid, kind of very click and follow my, kind of option 1, option 2 kind of chatbot example at one end. Then at the other end, you've got something that really does mimic a kind of live person being on the other end of that experience and everything in between. I think what's interesting with some of these new examples is seeing that kind of voice in and voice out element being laid over the top of just what otherwise would be a kind of chatbot. We've lived with those for a while. What do you think is, from your perspective, in the creative team, like what does that add? Like, why would, if you're sat there going, oh, okay, well, we already have a chatbot on our website, thanks very much, Rich. Like, what does adding the voice element of that actually add to the experience, do you think?
I think it's a more natural way of asking something. You type something in, you can have a chat, you Google whatever, like you have a very specific way of doing that. But having that voice element to it adds that level of personalization, and it just feels more like a conversation you'd have with an actual customer service agent. And I just think, it's something that it is a better experience for the user. Because it's just something that they're used to, and also there's no barriers. Like
Right.
chatbots have barriers. Like if you can't type, if you don't speak the language properly, if you're afraid of new technology, we've got an aging population. Voice is not something that you have to learn.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you see at the moment, particularly with, you mentioned this example here from United, and maybe you can click into that article for us. Is we see actually that people are well, I mean, airlines right now, I think is probably a topic of hot conversation, right? And I imagine a lot of people being quite frustrated with airlines, with the amount of cancellations and stuff going on. I don't know the specific situation for United at the moment, but this multimodal conversational service is like we've all been on the other end of a kind of customer service line when you're frustrated. I suppose maybe there is something here about adding in that kind of, as it says, that multimodal element. It's not just chat, but it's also voice and kind of visual aspects to it. You just feel like you're being looked after better. You just feel like you're being looked after
Yeah,
better than just a anonymous bot with the 3 dots that says it's typing when it's not typing. That's just a AWS call working through the system.
yeah. And
Absolutely.
no, you're right. It does give that kind of that personal and that element of it's this is a company that I'm happy that I'm not. If you're contacting customer service, there's a reason, and it's not positive. Like it just makes the whole thing make you feel better as a user, and makes it and just gives you a better kind of experience overall.
Absolutely. Well, let's see. I'm sure we'll see more airlines kind of coming onto this, and we've seen examples in the past of these new metaverse experiences coming out from Qatar, and obviously particularly here with what United are playing at. We'll be keen if there's any airline people watching. Get in touch. We'll help you out. That's the end of the sales pitch. Okay, cool. Final story of this week. Alexa is apparently going to space. Tell us more.
Yes, and this is, especially pressing given the images that were released today from the James Webb Space Telescope, which, if you haven't seen yet, absolutely amazing and awe-inspiring images, and I do recommend going to have a look. But yeah, NASA they've got this new mission. It's called Artemis 1. They are planning on going back to the moon, and some of the unmanned missions are going to have Alexa on board, which is really quite cool. Also quite scary, given 2001: A Space Odyssey. But there are much bigger things with this whole announcement. This whole Artemis 1 mission. It's aimed to set up a base on the moon. We're sending the first woman to the moon. We're sending the first person of color to the moon, which are massive steps forward. So I don't want to kind of trivialize any of that with the fact that Alexa's going up there. But it is, you think about this technology didn't exist sort of 5-10 years ago, and now we're sending it to the moon. Like,
absolutely,
how cool is that?
It's very cool, and I think what we see is with all of these examples is that we're just this is maybe drawing too fine a point on it before we kind of talk about this week's VCI insight, but we're seeing people use voice technology in more and more places out of the home. Now, admittedly, like for these astronauts, sorry, did you like that? Admittedly, for these astronauts, the shuttle is their home for that period of time, so maybe doesn't quite breach that, but they are certainly traveling, and that's something that we see all the time, right? So, I think it just goes to show that like there are more and more examples of where this kind of hands-free, eyes-free, it's like the ultimate use case, right? It's like the space shuttle is the ultimate use case of why people need to use their voice, and I think for many people watching, you've got to think about those examples of everyday life where we're just busy, right, and our hands or eyes are occupied, and when you're doing something else, you just need to be able to reach out and get an answer that you need. And that's always been possible, but now it's really possible when it comes to using voice. So maybe we'll see it coming to a galaxy near you. Rich, any other stories you want to highlight this week, or should we talk about this week's insight?
No, let's talk about this week's insight.
Okay, well, so this week's insight is coming from the VCI. So for those of you that, as I mentioned at the top of the show, if you have not yet downloaded the Voice Consumer Index, you can do so by going to the QR code that I'm going to put here, nice and big on the screen. You can go and scan that. You can also find it in the chat at the time marker here below. Just go and drop that in for you guys to be able to go and download it. It's completely free, no holds barred, no obligation. All we ask is an email address, and you can go and download this full document, which has got tons of insights in it. And so this week's stat that I want to share with everybody is the first insight in the report, which I'm just going to, here we go, let's just slide through some decks here. And it's really around this idea of habits and routines, which actually kind of picks up on the topic that we were just discussing. Hang on, I'm just going to pitch me and Rich to the other side of the monitor. Oh, I hope that didn't mess with your head too much. One of the things that we've seen from this year's study is that people really are using voice when they are active. It's kind of what we're talking about with the space shuttle, right? It's like when they're busy, when their hands are busy, when their eyes are busy, that they need to kind of get voice done, to get things done. And what we found here is the amount of people using their voice assistant is that the trend that we saw during COVID in particular was that people were really using their voice a lot in the home, a lot at kind of in the home setting, obviously because we were all spending a lot more time at home. Fair enough. But what we've now seen is that actually people are beginning to use it in many other places as well. And with that, we've seen the frequency go up. So here we're seeing now that, it's over a third of people in the UK and the US using their voice multiple times a day. Over half of them using it every day, right? Half of people, which is astonishing to think about really, how far we've come. And that people are trying to use it in more and more places in their lives, and that's kind of our big kind of point. Let me just grab another kind of stat here from the report. So let's fly through the countries. Let's go to the UK. Sorry. So what we also see is that, as I mentioned, where are people using it? Well, actually, people are using their voice far more than you would expect on their mobile device. 85% of people who use voice use it on their mobile device, and that predominantly is Siri or Google Assistant. For those that are using a smart speaker, massive lean towards Alexa in this as well. We've seen that growth go up. I'm now going to move me and Rich to the other side so you can see. Ready? Hold on, Rich. Okay. Whew. God, flying Rich. That was not quite as good as going on with the space shuttle. But we also see Alexa, this growth has changed, right? So yeah, kind of this growth in usage has also gone up in the past month. In the past year even. And I think, yeah, we see people using more and more different places and spaces when it comes to using these things. Rich, you've got some connected headphones, I'm sure, around the house, or what's your kind of primary voice device of choice?
So around the home, device of choice is Alexa. Every time, without doubt. Out and about, it is Google Assistant, and I do use it a lot. More than I think. Like since this report came out, I've been kind of trying to be a bit more conscious of when I've been using it, and it is a lot. When walking down the street with headphones, with connected headphones in, asking Google something, or even when I'm in the shop, adding things to like the shopping list that
Yeah,
I know actually I'm going to need when I get round there, but I know for a fact I'm going to have forgotten by the time I get round there. Um,
happens to me
so
too.
yeah, yeah, it's not old age, but yeah, it's being used an increasing amount, and some of the things that early on, I remember saying that people aren't going to want to talk to these devices out and about. We're too kind of prude.
Yeah,
The British way is not the way that we're going to sort of talking to these devices in the streets. Certainly not like they do in sort of Latin America and places like that. But actually, we are seeing that, and we are seeing a level of acceptance where walking out and about, maybe not on a train or on the bus yet, but walking out and about, you are more likely to be using them as you like in your day-to-day routines.
yeah, and I think one of the other things we've looked at the past couple of years is this kind of public-private domain, right? So you mentioned like when you're out, maybe in an open space, maybe not in a kind of enclosed space with other people around. That still feels kind of like a public domain, right? But when you're out in a public space where there's no one around, technically that's almost in a private space because it's kind of only you. There's no one else around it, so you kind of carry that sense of, oh, it's actually okay to do this because I'm not disturbing other people around us. So I think what we're just going to gradually see is that erode and erode and erode. We're all used to now working in kind of more flexible places and spaces. We're used to having people around us that are on the phone all the time, and it just becomes more common. So I'm keen to see where this goes. So well, that's this week's insight. If you want to go and dig into more, then you can do that. And we're also going to be doing this session every week here on Tuesdays at 2:00 here on LinkedIn Live, and you'll also be able to go and watch the video back both live here, but we'll also republish it to the Vixen Labs YouTube page as well, so you can go and check that out. I want to encourage you again, if you have not yet downloaded the report, Rich's head is in the way, but if you kind of go the other way, there you go, that QR code right there. Just go grab that. Maybe if you're not watching on your phone already, go scan that, or do the smart thing now, screenshot this, and then go find it in a moment. You can go download that. You'll also find the link to it in the comments below the video. Rich, thanks so much as always for bringing the news and for being with us this week. And for those of you that are watching, let's say bye to Rich, and we'll see him again very soon. And thanks to all of you for joining and having a chat with me about what's going on. Hey, if you are interested in this stuff, if you want some consultation on it, if you want the team to come and give you a breakdown of what these stats might mean to you, what they mean for your business, we're totally here for you to do that. All you've got to do is send a very simple email to info@vixenlabs.co. That's info@vixenlabs.co, and arrange a session with the team. We'll come into your brand or business, your agency or other company, and walk you through the data that's most relevant to your business sector. We've got breakdowns on retail, consumer goods, healthcare, finance, entertainment. So if you are in any one of those sectors or any one in between, let us come and help walk you through it. Book in a free half an hour consultation for us to take you through the data and then look at how that might impact your voice strategy for 2022 and beyond. Thanks so much for joining us here again on LinkedIn. If you like this session, I really hope that you'll hit the like or the celebrate button down below if you're watching live. That would be great. Share it into your timeline so other people can watch it. And good feedback, and we'll do these again very soon. Thanks so much for being here. I've been JP from Vixen Labs, and I'll see you again very soon.